You're Matt Ford. You host the Good Trouble show with Matt Ford. And you're also, I don't know if you're the only person behind
Stand for Better.
Stand for Better.
So yeah, we dissolved that a while back. We were primarily known for producing media content supporting Democrats, and we sort of taken a sort of temporary sort of turn away from that for the moment to focus on the UAP issue. However, one thing that we found was that the UAP issue doesn't track well or test well with Democrats. It tends to be, for whatever reason, something more appealing to Republicans. So when we understood that, I decided that it was an important topic to sort of introduce to our followers, which are primarily Democratic activists.
It is more popular among people who are conservative, and even now, I mean, even though Gillibrand has been a wrecking ball in terms of like bashing down walls and trying to get through to the truth, it seems like from our perspective, the people who make the most noise are largely Republican. I mean, Tim Burchett, for example, and so I wonder. I mean, how do you approach Democrats and with an argument? I mean, first of all, why do you think they're less likely to be interested in this topic? And do you think that's something that can be overcome, and that the future of this issue is going to be bipartisan?
Well, firstly, it absolutely is going to be bipartisan. I mean, I'm the screaming liberal that your mother warned you about. But I'm a big fan of Congressman Tim Burchett, and other Republicans have really done really great work on this. And I have, as of late, have really been sort of encouraging people of my party to jump on board and not get left behind by the train. Republicans are really taking leadership on it. On the other side, you do have Senator Kirsten Gillibrand, who was on our show a couple of months ago, and she has been an absolute trailblazer. Her leading it, but also along with Marco Rubio, Senator Mark Warner. It has been a very bipartisan effort to get this legislation into the National Defense Authorization Act and the Intelligence Authorization Act. So in the FY23 NDAA, it was something like 33 pages specifically related to UFOs, UAPs, whichever acronym you like, and that happened with bipartisan effort. So it wasn't just one party or the other. I think both parties that have been tracking this issue realize that this particular topic transcends party. It's about us as a species. It's about us as Americans, and it absolutely transcends party. Now, addressing your earlier question, as far as why this tends to track more with Republicans than Democrats, I think if you sort of look at it at a sort of surface level, this does play into, a government cover-up, a deep state narrative, that there's an element of our government that's operating out of the purview of law. So obviously with the previous administration, that was a very big theme. So it plays into that. The other thing too, I think in general, and this is a generalization, so not all Republicans, but I think overall many Republicans are skeptical of our scientists. We saw that with Dr. Fauci and whatnot. And, so this, in a way, I mean, like if by and large, if you look at it, with the exception of people like Professor Avi Loeb, scientists have been very, very outwardly skeptical in this subject. So you have Democrats that are, as a generalization, very trusting of government, very trusting of science, and on the surface level, they view this topic as being anti-science and it's all a government cover-up, so it must not be true. So that's and again, these are all generalizations. Not all Democrats believe this, not all Republicans believe it, but I think if you were to take it from a 50,000-foot view, I think that would be the case. Now, I will say and part of what led me to begin messaging on this on our show was I did a poll on our Stand for Better Twitter account, and I think at the time it was around 50,000 viewers. I'm sorry, subscribers. I think we're at about 84, something like that now.
Wow.
And I put a poll that said, would you be interested in learning more about this UAP/UFO phenomenon? And I forgot the exact breakdown, but it was for the most part no. And that really surprised me. I knew that this was an important topic, regardless of your party, and that was really my motivation to begin messaging on this. Again, most of our viewers are Democratic activists, so if there's kind of skeptical of this subject, and I think that this will be a subject that will be front and center become front and center at an exponential rate. I felt that it was my sort of a mission of sorts to introduce this topic. Now, I will say as well, adding on to that, when I first began tweeting about it, messaging on it, there were very few retweets from our followers, and that has increased over time. So I think that's a good sign that our messaging is reaching our Democratic friends, and they're waking up to the fact that this is an issue. It's an issue we should all be concerned about. It's an issue of national security, and it's an issue that we should be asking our lawmakers questions about.
Yeah, there's a lot there that I want to kind of get into. I mean, am I wrong in thinking that Stand for Better was like largely a reaction to Trump?
Correct. Yeah. So our primary messaging was against Trump and Trumpism. You know, I have tons of Republicans. I used to be a Republican. I voted Republican in my early years, but we felt that Trump was destructive to our democracy, and so we began producing ads right in the 2020 election cycle to do what we could to ensure Biden won the election. We produced a little over, I'd say, around 150 films. Right around, I don't know, I've lost track because since Elon took over Twitter, we've lost the metric reports. But we were at around 16 to 17 million unique views of our political films on Twitter. So it was actually through our political efforts that was sort of the mechanism that opened the doors for us to speak to folks in Washington about this subject. So just kind of simple relationship building.
What's interesting to me about this, where all this comes together, is that like people have been watching, people in the media and the voting public, this sort of, I mean, I don't want to insult anybody here, but I think it's a mind virus, this whole QAnon, like a conspiracy theory, this deep state idea. But then now it's like there has been this unveiling of things, machinations maybe that aren't quite proven yet, but it's in the ether. And this goes back and draws upon, 70, 80 years of UFO lore about there being this kind of, below level, below ground programs and such. How do we keep like people's attention on these issues and the need to like, get some fresh air on the subject and whatnot, but then also not feed into things like the QAnon conspiracy, where, I mean, for me and maybe for other voters, the mere fact that they think that Donald Trump is the savior of our political system is enough to disqualify it as making any sense. But I mean, for the people who have a little distance from politics or whatever else, they seem like they're coming from the same universe.
Yes. And James, it's funny you mentioned that. So I had this exact discussion with a friend of mine a couple of days ago. Firstly, it's tricky because I think it can become a slippery slope. In my view, QAnon is nothing short of a huge cult, and I think that the people that believe in that are a bit disconnected from reality. So the issue is that this does, it, in my view, and I've spoken to a lot of whistleblowers that I've referred specifically to members on the Senate Armed Services Committee people from the intelligence community, people from DOD, people that have been involved in what is currently going on in this conversation. And I can tell you with absolute certainty that these programs have been going on, and they've been going on for a very long time. They've been run illegally out of the purview of Congress, which is not how our democracy is supposed to operate. Now, the thing that people have to keep in mind is, it's like anything in life. There's some things that are true, and then there's some things that are not. We do not live in a black and white world. We live in a world whose reality is many shades of gray. So while this is true, that doesn't mean that all of these other, QAnon or vaccine, different conspiracy theories are true. So it's not an all or nothing thing. And I think it's important people keep that in mind, that just because this has occurred and was perhaps in the beginning done for all of the right reasons in terms of our national security, we've seen time after time in our American history of programs that have gone, have gone off the rails and sort of grown their own legs and ended up sort of living outside of the original intent of the program. So if you go and you look at past things, such as with the Church Commission, where the CIA had sort of gone rogue or gone off the rails, and you have the Church Commission and
MK Ultra.
So yeah, MK Ultra, all of that stuff. So there are things that do happen that are not democratic and are not what our country should stand for. But that doesn't mean that all of these other conspiracy theories are true.
No, so I mean, I guess if I'd like you to maybe take a direct crack at some of the reporting I've seen where it's basically implied or outright stated that the interest in this is because we have a conspiratorially minded Republican majority in Congress that's driving this narrative. Can you just address from your perspective on why that's not the case?
I'm not really sure that that's it. I don't
either. There was a report I saw where they were like insinuating that that's what's driving it.
Well, I'm sure that's probably what my Democratic friends are probably gonna kind of push out there. Tim Burchett, who we've invited on our show, and would love for him to come on, but I think we're too far left of the aisle there. I can tell you, this guy, he's not looking at this from a conspiracy or he's not a nutty guy in my view. Do I agree with him politically on 99% of everything else? No. But I think he's doing this for the right reason. You have to look at in some ways of what is politically expedient for both parties. So, for instance, Senator Gillibrand, who I have enormous respect for, and I think we as Americans should be very grateful for what she has done on this topic. She cannot get in front of the White House on this. Like and I'm sure she has presidential ambitions. I would count myself as one of the first people that would vote for her, but she doesn't have the political capital or not even political capital. It would be not a good political move for her to jump out in front of this and say, Biden needs to hop on the podium and talk about this, or why isn't the White House doing this? She would shoot herself in the foot if she were to do that. And I think that is the case with many Democrats messaging aggressively on this. They have to be very careful. They can't make Biden, they can't make their president look bad. They can't make it look like the White House is covering something up. It's not in their political best interest. Now, is it the right thing to do? Sure, but that's not reality. That's not the real world. On the other side, on the Republicans, there is no disadvantage politically for them messaging on it. It puts heat on the Biden administration. Right. It's calling out something that is an issue, and is not what this country stands for, what our Constitution stands for. So it's really in many ways, I think the political optics. Republicans they have nothing to lose on that. And even if you back up even further and think about, okay, well, if I'm President Biden and I know about this, which I believe he does, what is strictly from the political lens, what advantage is there for him to go and get up in front of the podium and dump this out? I'm sure you would have many in the Republican Party, the Marjorie Taylor Greens and the Lauren Boeberts and the nuttier factions calling him the alien president and all of this stuff. So if I were him, just thinking about it from the political lens, I would be weighing what would be the political advantage for me jumping on this grenade? Would it be better to just kick the can down the road to another president or whoever? Now, do I agree that that's what he should be doing? No. The right thing for this country and the right thing for our citizens and our species is to get in front, pull the Band-Aid off and say, this is what's been going on. It's been happening across both Democratic and Republican administrations. These are the reasons why it was originally run this way. These are the reasons why we need to come clean about it. That would be my hope for President Biden. We've messaged on our platform several times directly at President Biden that it's time to do the right thing. But there's the political reality, and then there's the right thing to do, which they should be this. It shouldn't be differentiated that way. But
yeah,
I think unfortunately,
reality. Well, an interesting conversation I had with Bob McGuire, Science Bob McGuire on Twitter.
I love Science Bob.
Great guy, right? And he was on our television show, Headline Humboldt, and he really. I had Blumenthal on, which was a great get for me because that's huge, And he came on and contextualized it, and he was colorful, and he was referring to the videos that were airing. It was like a whole level of media mastership that we usually don't see in our Market 195. Anyway, he has a prediction that the disclosure is probably going to happen before Thanksgiving, and he thinks that politics is at heart in that decision, in that they want to raise the stakes of the presidential election and give the people a choice of having some responsible adult dealing with this in Biden, or someone who is known for being chaotic and unpredictable in Donald Trump. Do you think that has any reality given your contacts and conversations you've had?
I don't know. I don't have any information or anything. I don't have any knowledge about that. I would think. I mean, we've already seen RFK Jr. Address this. Obviously, I don't want to see him in the White House, but he's addressing it. My hope is that politicians, or if it's Trump, or hopefully somebody not, batshit crazy, is on the Republican ticket. Hopefully, he would make that an issue, as should Joe Biden make it an issue. It's time our politicians act like adults, understand that we are all adults, and have a honest, transparent conversation. I do think that the point that you bring up about having sort of a responsible adult in the room handling this topic, I think is very, very key. You don't, a topic that is so consequential that to our, to us as a country, and really probably the biggest news in our, in our modern humanity, it needs to be handled carefully, and it needs to be handled responsibly. I am not one that thinks that absolutely everything about this topic needs to become public knowledge. I believe that there are certain aspects of it that deal with our national security that need to remain secret. And that is the responsible way to handle this topic. And having someone sitting in the Oval Office that is not erratic and is well thought, is thoughtful, smart, and puts the country before their own selfish interests. I think that is important to have someone like that in the Oval Office to handle this. And being a Democrat, I hope it's Joe Biden. But let's say that it were a Republican, I would hope it would not be Donald Trump at all, and it would be hopefully somebody that is not a lunatic. So,
well, and there's also, I mean, even just merely the fact that, say what you want about Donald Trump, he tends to bend everything that happens toward his political or economic fortunes. Like that's what I mean, I don't think anybody can argue with the fact that he is prone to manipulate the events to make him look better or to advance his own interests.
He likes to move hurricanes on maps, I hear.
What's that?
I said he likes to move hurricanes on maps.
Yes, yeah, Sharpie gauge.
Right, yeah.
So I mean, a couple of questions I want to, since you have, you're in the political realm and you have contacts and whatnot. Is the White House actively engaged in this? I mean, I've heard reporting from Ross Coulthart and others that Jake Sullivan, the national security advisor, I mean, I know that they formed some sort of like committee to kind of look at this, and there was some talk about how that was going to actually could potentially be the instrument by which some of this stuff actually gets knocked loose, because they can't play the same games of obfuscation with the national security advisor that they can with the the committees in Congress. But I mean, do you know if that's really happening, if they're actively engaged in wrestling with this? Or because the denials that you see like during the press briefings and stuff, they don't ring true to me. I mean, it's like, oh yeah, we'll ask the Pentagon. Well, that doesn't say anything, and it doesn't say it's not happening. So like it leaves the questions wide open,
Well, I think the White House's comms plan on this is a freaking disaster. Again, I'm a Democrat, but I'm also very critical of some of the BS that happens in my party and even BS that happens in the administration. I think that they've not handled it well. I think that they have an opportunity to handle it well, but if they're just going to continue to hand this off to the Pentagon press office, Susan Go, it's not good. What they put out, Susan Go and their press office is really just a load of horse, what. Regarding your other question, so they stood up a group that Jake Sullivan was a part of, and part of that mission was to determine what the guardrails were left and right in terms of response to more UAP encounters. And I think that was really mainly focused on the prosaic stuff, the balloons, that sort of thing. I think that there's that. But I can also tell you that there have been other meetings about this that are not about balloons.
Yeah.
In the White House.
Okay, well, that's good. That's reassuring. How about since we're on the subject of events that are happening that seem like they might be related to something that we're trying to get at, there was the recent Five Eyes intelligence meeting, and then the gathering of people at the base in Ohio. What's the name of the base again? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm blanking on it.
It's a major. It's Wright-Patterson.
Wright-Patterson. Yeah.
So do you have any insight into whether those are related to this ongoing creeping disclosure?
I believe the meeting that you're talking about at Wright-Patterson, I believe that was held under the Office of Director of National Intelligence. Mm-hmm. My understanding was that, and I could be wrong, this wasn't something that I've really tracked and put a lot of time into looking into, but my understanding is that was kind of sort of a normal thing.
Okay.
That it had occurred before. I'm certain Balloon Gate was discussed. But I don't have any direct knowledge. I know as much as anyone else probably does on that particular topic. And it's easy to read into these things and go, oh, they're
absolutely
going in there, talking about UFOs. And, the fact is, we just don't know what they're talking about. We'll never find out because it's classified info unless somebody leaks it. Yeah. But I'm not sure. I've often wondered is if this is all part of like a coordinated plan, a coordinated rollout.
A lot of people think so, but then you listen to Chris Mellon and he's like, that is not happening. I am the one forcing a lot of these issues. He gave a passionate defense as to why that wasn't the case, because he was the one that came up with some of the steps and pushed them, and there was no coordination,
Yeah, the thing to remember is that, and I agree with Christopher Mellon. We're very big fans of his work, and he is really one of the reasons that, or one of the forces behind the scenes that has held Congress's feet to the fire. So just as much as Senator Gillibrand, we owe Christopher Mellon a debt of gratitude as far as us as a nation. And I would agree with that. I have kind of wondered, is there a big overarching plan? And I came to the same conclusion that there's not. I think in general, there's a great deal of dysfunction in government. And I think that is kind of a feature, not a bug. Also, I think people tend to think government is one giant monolith, but
Absolutely.
it's many different factions competing for power, competing for funding, competing for what they're going to do when they get out of government, and what contractor they're going to cozy up to and make a bajillion dollars. So it's just, as I mentioned earlier in the interview, things are not black and white in the real world. It's the exact same thing as government. I think that these senators and congressmen, they have a lot on their plate. They're juggling a lot of things. So I can see where it might be easy to sort of forget about a topic or put it on, lower on the list with things that are happening in Ukraine and China and all of that. So yeah, I don't think that there's a coordinated thing. I think that the only way this full disclosure is going to happen is for your viewers to call up their congressmen, call up their senators, congressmen, men and women, men and women senators, whoever their representatives are. They call them up. It's easy to do. It's easy to find their information and say, hey, I'm a constituent, which is important. It gets you a long way when that staffer picks up the phone call, and you explain why this is important. You care about aviation safety. You care about things running around in our skies that are that pose a safe flight of safety risk. You care about knowing if elements of our government and outside of our government, people in non-governmental organizations and defense contractors have been running programs hidden from Congress and the American people. It's the only way that this is going to keep the legs that it has is for people to pick up the phone and engage with their lawmakers.
Absolutely. What do you think about this recent NDAA addition that they added about if there are programs within SAPs that aren't being reported to Congress, they won't get funding? I mean, it seems like there would be a clear connection between being reviewed by Congress and getting funding, but apparently that may not exist yet, and this would try and close that loophole. Is that a response to basically what Grush has told them, do you think? Or is that just, trying to close whatever gaps there might be in reporting?
My guess is it's probably a little bit of both. Obviously, what Grush is alleging, and and the thing you have to keep in mind with Grush, you have all these debunkers, these professional debunkers that are saying.
I saw your post last night, by the way.
Pardon me?
I saw your post last night that it's a cottage industry or whatever.
Exactly. I think it's totally healthy to be a skeptic. There's one thing, being skeptical about something and wanting to see proof. That is absolutely fair. And we should all be skeptical about what we're told and not just buy it at face value. But in my personal opinion, many of these debunkers, they're approaching it from a predetermined conclusion,
Yeah.
And
It's impossible, so therefore it's not true. I mean, that's
exactly, you know,
yeah.
Mick West is somebody that we tend to focus our ire on, and I always say, you know, for him it's kind of a straw man argument. You know, he'll be happy when he touches the craft, or he'll be happy when he's shown top secret compartmentalized information, which he knows is never going to happen.
Never going to
So
happen.
it's just kind of the game these guys play, and that's, I think it was Ross Coulthart who coined the phrase the debunking industry, and I think that really really encapsulates it very, very, very well. Anyway, the point I was going to make about David Grush, the thing to keep in mind is that he presented classified evidence to the Inspector General, DOD IG, ICIG, classified information under oath in an official investigation. This isn't, you know, something, you know, he you know, picked up in the National Enquirer or you know, or New York Post or any of those other tabloids. You know, this is classified data that he was privy to in a SCIF, a sensitive compartmentalized information facility, that he legally presented in the course of an investigation. So that in and of itself carries enormous weight.
Yeah.
You know, the other thing to consider too is while he was doing this, he was still employed. He still held top secret clearance. And if he were going into an IG investigation and lying about it, he would have lost his clearance, full stop. Yeah. So when someone like Senator Gillibrand or really anyone in Congress is hearing about this, my understanding is Senator Gillibrand is driving this legislation. When she hears of these allegations, I'm sure she's like, you know, what is going on? And you know, the thing to keep in mind with DOD and IC, words matter. It's like any sort of legal document.
Yeah.
You know, any lawyer, especially in the Pentagon or the intelligence community, they're going to read this legislation and find a way to circumvent Congress's intent, but do so in a legal way. Yeah. So the senator and whoever else is doing this is my understanding is part of the Senate Select Committee of Intelligence or Senate Armed Services Committee. I think they're doing this to close any loopholes to make it illegal. I'm not sure what the remedies are, what the penalties are. So to try and again get these SAPs, these illegally run SAPs, to be coughed up. Because remember, you know, Congress controls the purse strings. That's the power that they have.
Yeah, and so this would hit them where it hurts.
Oh yeah, totally. You know, so you know that's their job is funding of these programs. So if the Pentagon is lying to them, which they have been, and have been hiding things from them, which they have been, and other nodes of government, which have been doing so, it requires Congress, it requires people like Senator Gillibrand to go back and add amendments to the NDAA to get these people to come clean.
Well, and if you just if you take a step back and look at how that NDAA has taken shape over the past few years, it's like they set up a path and then they adjust it and they're like fine tuning it to make sure that they are eventually going to flush their prey. It seems like, you know,
right.
And
I
my argument
agree.
for people who say it's all a bunch of hogwash is, well, then why are Senate offices and their staffers wasting all this time and energy in crafting this intricate, you said 30-something pages of legislation? They're not going to do that for nothing. You know what I mean? They have a lot of important things to worry about. And so there's obviously something at root here that's causing, you know, them to be interested.
Yeah, I mean, that's a very common argument by the professional debunking industry. You know, they're like, you know, these Senate staffers I think Mick West had said that, or maybe this guy that lives in a basement, said something along the lines of these Senate staffers or congressional staffers have duped their bosses into believing all this crazy UFO stuff and spooky ghosts and all of this garbage that these debunkers put out. But the fact is, these staffers, not all of them, but the ones that deal with intelligence issues and national security issues, they have top secret clearance.
Christopher Mellon was one of them at one point.
Yeah.
Right?
So
yeah.
these people, these aren't like some, kid straight out of college that's, spending most of his time hanging out at Starbucks and reading conspiracy stuff. These guys, they have top secret clearance. Their job is to advise their bosses on national security issues. These same people are allowed to, if they have the right tickets, they are allowed to go and view classified evidence in a SCIF, depending on whatever the level of classification is. So if it's a TSSCI thing, it's going to happen in a SCIF. Yeah. These staffers, they can't advise their bosses if they are not allowed to see the intelligence product.
Yeah,
they are, and these are the ones that and these are the unsung heroes. Obviously the senators and congressmen, they're the front-facing personalities, but it's these staffers that are probably not paid anywhere as much as they should be, that are doing this work, that are listening to testimony from people like David Grush and other whistleblowers. These staffers are they're really important to this whole process, and they see the classified product, they present it to their bosses, and that's how these folks make decisions. They don't make people like Senator Gillibrand or Marco Rubio are not going to spend their political capital legislating stuff that is bunk.
Yeah.
They're not gonna do it. It's a waste of their time, it's a waste of their resources, and it's a waste of of our taxpayers' time. So when they're legislating this stuff, they're not legislating in a vacuum, they're legislating on data, despite what these debunkers would tell you.
Yeah. One of the things that I can't wait to see is in 20 years or whenever it is, I mean, maybe it'll be 150 years, there's some sort of dramatic rendering of this process of like the inching of the ball forward and staffers meeting in small offices and like, I mean, part of me thinks it's going to be like Men in Black / Independence Day, but who knows? But I want to see that movie. I want to figure out who the heroes actually are and who the ones that are, keeping up the good fight, and all that kind of thing. One question, you mentioned that you've talked to whistleblowers and you referred them on. I'm hearing rumblings now in the media. I don't have context within, the whistleblower circles or whatever, but that they don't trust Sean Kirkpatrick all that much. And a lot of it's because he reports to the Deputy Undersecretary of Defense, and they feel like that office has not played straight sometimes. And then also in his hearings before Congress and whatnot, he's not giving the truth. If what Grush says is true and they've had those conversations, at least it's being couched as non-verifiable, or whatever. What are your feelings on Kirkpatrick, and is it a lost cause at this point?
Well, I don't think it's a lost cause.
I mean, him and running it and getting somewhere with it, I guess.
Well, do I think he's the right man for the job? I do not. So let's back up for a second. So the Office of Undersecretary of Defense for USDINS, Intelligence and Security, run by Ronald Moultrie, that office has been the primary, I'm trying to think of the right word, the primary organization that has lied to the American public and lied to Congress. They have blood on their hands. Yeah. And a lot of the administrative terrorism that that these whistleblowers have experienced has been out of OUSD-INS. They're dirty. I don't know why.
Yeah.
Lou Elizondo has spoken. Yeah, Lou Elizondo has spoken specifically that OUSD-INS was the primary arm of the DoD that went after him, and that department has retaliated against whistleblowers. So you have now, and the other issue too is that Sean Kirkpatrick was installed in AARO by Ronald Moultrie and I believe his name was Dave Taylor, who's no longer in OUSD-INS. So you have to sit and ask yourself, well, if this is the office that has been the primary vehicle of retaliation against our servicemen and women, I personally am skeptical about the motivations of who they would place in that particular office. And sorry, I totally blanked on the other part of your question.
Basically that if it's a lost cause, if he's ever going to be able to find a way to, do the right thing in terms of this stuff, or if he's being held back. I mean, what do you?
Well, I mean, here's the thing. Kirkpatrick, he has the power, despite what you've heard, he has the same power to discover the same things David Grush did.
Oh, so the Title 50 stuff doesn't make a difference then? It
doesn't make a difference. Okay. Now, he because of the NDAA legislation, if he has, which he does, if he has or his staffers have the correct tickets, the correct clearance and the correct tickets, they have the power to go and look in these programs. Now, there's a caveat. He cannot direct or something like that, but it's the Title 50 thing is not quite what it's set to be. And actually, if your viewers, if you go to the Liberation Times, liberationtimes.com, Christopher Sharp today published a really great article that essentially says the Pentagon's lack of confirmation on UFO programs and materials of unknown origin. And in it, Department of DoD spokesman Susan Go provided statements that neither confirm nor deny the existence of these programs. Now that in itself is a big bombshell, but of particular note, and related to your question, she stated, let's see here, she basically, she states that AARO, okay, here we go. So she's in statement from Susan Go, she says, by law, AARO may receive all UAP-related information, including any classified national security information involving military intelligence and intelligence-related activities at all levels of classification, regardless of any restrictive access controls, special access programs, or compartmented access programs. Moreover, there is no restriction to AARO receiving any past or present UAP-related information, regardless of the organizational affiliation of the original classification authority within DoD intelligence community or any other U.S. government department agency. So, what she's saying is that AARO, they can go and they can look into all of this. So this was something I misunderstood as well. I thought that Title 50
locked him out, basically.
Yeah. So she added here the issue of potential supplemental statutory authorities for AARO, whether codified in Title 10 or Title 50 of the United States Code, will be considered as part of its mission requirements. This issue, however, is separate and wholly unrelated to AARO's unimpeded ability to receive all UAP-related information through authorized disclosures. So again, it boils down. Kirkpatrick can go and look into anything he wants. I'm sure they've put roadblocks up, but he could have found the exact same stuff Grush did, and that wasn't Grush's job. Well, it sort of was. UAPTF, he was supposed to be digging around. Now, in relation to the whistleblowers and Sean Kirkpatrick, I can tell you unequivocally, I have not heard one good thing from any whistleblower about their experience with AARO. It's some of the stories that have been shared with me. It almost kind of sounds like Keystone Cops over there. Yeah. The whistleblowers, I think I would say, as a general rule, do not have any confidence in Kirkpatrick, nor do they trust his intentions, whether that is founded in fact or not. So. And again, that's where I think that he is the wrong man for the job. If you're investigating something, if you're investigating a case, you don't put a scientist in there to do peer-reviewed papers and things like that.
That's part of what
one whistleblower in particular told Kirkpatrick during an interview that if you're relying on the scientific method to figure this out, you're not going to figure it out, because this stuff defies our understanding of physics. And I think that Kirkpatrick is so focused on that for whatever reason, I'm not sure. I just think that having someone like him in that position is not the right person to have in that position. And I don't mean necessarily him personally, but I think having a scientist to run a department that is investigating something that is potentially a national security issue, it should not be someone of his ilk.
Well, it also seems like there's a conflict inherent there, where you have this issue of the airborne clutter, right? Like transportation safety, people want the flight lanes clear, and these UAPs represent a challenge to that. That's one universe of where this search is going. But then there's also these whistleblowers who are coming forward, and they deal with a lot of legacy information and stuff that's been going on over the years. And it seems like there's this bifurcation where he was assigned that duty, but he doesn't really, it seems to me that he doesn't care about that. He cares about the science that he can study and find and verify. And for him, it seems like that's just hearsay, and I can't say that for sure because I haven't talked to the man, but it seems as if he's heavily favoring one portion of that mission over the other. And that would seem like the reason for me.
I mean, obviously I'm not in his mind. Yeah. I do like his choice in ties. I like how he dresses. I respect that. And he wears a tie chain. That's pretty dope. But some of the feedback that I've gotten from whistleblowers that have provided testimony to AARO is that there seems to be a sort of lack of curiosity about more of the unknown facts in their experiences that are not publicly known. There was just sort of, one whistleblower sort of summarized it as he felt that they just wanted to get off the phone, that they were doing it because they had to. When this whistleblower offered up, do you want to know about this person that was there and this person was there? There seemed to be a general lack of interest. Now, on the flip side, I've heard from officials in Congress that he is trying to develop a historical record. But just in general, I have not heard anything good from any whistleblower about their experience with AARO. I hope that changes, but as a general rule, I would say no.
That's what I mean. Are we at risk of basically running through this moment because we're not set up properly to encourage the whistleblowers or even potentially give them the protection they need if retaliation is going on? I mean, what are the odds that they just stick their heads back under the sand because they've tried to get the information out and it wasn't taken seriously?
I think that is a huge, I think it's a very valid concern. I can tell you that Sean Kirkpatrick's testimony in the small Senate hearing that Senator Gillibrand chaired, his testimony and his statement about, what there's no evidence of extraterrestrial activity, I forgot what exactly it was, had a net negative / damaging effect on whistleblowers. You think about it, these whistleblowers, they're not seeking fame, they're not seeking fortune, they're coming forward at great risk to their personal safety, to their careers. There's nothing in it for them, financial or whatever, that is any sort of those incentives just aren't there. They're coming forward because they love their country, they know it's the right thing to do. So if I were them and I saw how the head of AARO, who has received all of this testimony from people that have worn the uniform, that in their careers had secret or top secret clearance, that worked for the government, or either intelligence or DOD, for this guy to go in front of the public and say, yeah, we're not really seeing anything. Could be balloons. I don't think he exactly said that, but
Yeah.
that had a net negative impact and was really discouraging to the whistleblowers. And I'm sure a lot of them would be asking themselves, is it really worth the grief of coming forward and enduring all of this? I mean, we saw what, Lou Elizondo, whom I've never communicated with, never met, but I have such respect for the man. Absolutely. that blew this thing open, and all of the garbage and arrows that were thrown his way from the press and the debunkers and the professional debunkers. I don't know how he's taken it all and has survived all of it. This guy's a real patriot. The same thing for David Grush. Stephen Greenstreet of the at
New York Post basement office. Oh, you froze up on me.
Oh, did I? Oh, shit.
Okay, now you're fine. All right.
Okay, yeah.
I can edit that out.
So, you look at like Stephen Greenstreet, who writes for one of Rupert's rags.
New York Post.
New York Post, yeah. The only thing he's able to do is sort of try and sully Grush's reputation by saying, Grush talked to this guy and talked to this guy, and this guy is a kook, so that must mean that Grush is a kook. So that's all these sort of whistleblowers. I'm sorry, these professional debunkers have is to just throw shade on this guy, try and discredit him, the same as what they did with Elizondo, and the same that they do with all of these people. And it's a significant amount of abuse that these guys are enduring. So I'm sure they, at the end of the day, they go, man, is this really worth it?
Yeah, that's unfortunate. Hopefully we can get our stuff together before that.
I agree.
Becomes, but I mean, so our hour's about up, and that's basically the length I'm trying to reach. But I do have, I wanted to get in sort of the personal part of this. I mean, how did you get interested in the topic? And did you have any experiences yourself that are unexplained? And how has it affected your life otherwise, outside of
wow, that's a good one. So I as a kid, I saw Close Encounters of the Third Kind. I remember in elementary school, I found these UFO books in the library about the Barney and Betty Hill thing. I think I was 8 or 9 years old at the time, and read about it. And Close Encounters came out. I'm 55, so I was about 9 years old when that thing came out, and was very interested in the topic. And I think, like with all people, you lose, your interests end up going somewhere else, and it completely fell off my radar. I'd never seen anything or had any weird experiences. Didn't know of anyone that had. And back in the early 90s, I think I think is when I came across John Mack's book about his study of abductees, or mid-90s or somewhere in that. I don't know. And that kind of piqued my interest. Also, as well, I've studied U.S. and Russian nuclear policy since the early 90s, kind of just another side interest, and came across Robert Hastings' book, UFO and Nukes, later on. And around this time that I became interested again in the UFO topic, which was just prior to the UAPTF report that came out in 2000. It sort of coincided, I'm sorry, 2020, not 2000, 2020. And then also prior to that in 2017, the New York Times article sort of kind of reinvigorated my interest. I'm kind of taking a long path to answer your question, but essentially, when I decided I'm going to start messaging on it, one of the things that I did is I wrote an article for the Debrief that was essentially saying that the reason for the U.S. Air Force's silence on the matter is the fact that UAPs have been tampering with our land-based strategic nuclear deterrent for a very long time. Part of the research into that article was reaching out to the author of UFO and Nukes, Mr. Robert Hastings, who is he's an amazing individual. I chat with him via text at least once a week. Another guy that has really gone out of his way and sacrificed a lot to bring this topic forward. Anyway, so what many people do not know is that he is an experiencer. He's experienced this phenomenon ever since he was a kid. So I started doing a series of interviews with him in research to this article, and it was shortly thereafter that was outside one night and looked up, and there was this orb coming right towards the house, around 200 feet above the ground, about a quarter mile away. Had never seen anything like that in my life. I have an aviation background. I have a cinematography background, so I know what stuff looks like. I know what's an aircraft light, and I know what's not an aircraft light. And that was the first time anything had ever happened in my life that I'd seen that. It came back 5 separate times over about a series of a year. Had weird poltergeist stuff start occurring in the house. Other people had witnessed these things as well here. So it's to be honest, it's a bit rattling. I don't know if there's this whole concept of a hitchhiker effect, where if you communicate with someone that has had experiences with this phenomenon through quantum entanglement or things that are smarter than or more complicated than my brain can process. All I know is that as soon as I started communicating with Robert Hastings, it began happening at my house. And I think it's one thing if you were like me, I always knew this was probably real. It just made sense logically, but when you see it with your own eyes, when you experience it multiple times, when other people are there with you to experience the same thing and are seeing the same things, it's a totally different ball game. And to be honest, it was very rattling. I haven't seen anything in about 2 months. I'm perfectly happy if nothing else happens again. I've seen enough. I don't need to see anymore. I know it's real. I don't need anybody to tell me. I've experienced it multiple times. It hasn't had an effect. In some ways negative, because it is disconcerting. But on the other hand, it's also had a positive effect in that I know for myself that this is real. It's not seagulls or balloons or whatever they want to say, that it's real. It's important that we as Americans are told as much as possible about this reality, so that we can, as Americans, as a species, can decide for ourselves, not have the government decide for you, but to decide for yourselves how this affects your life moving forward.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that has caused me to take this up is a lot of research. I haven't had any firsthand experiences. My wife has, relatively recently, but it's interesting that like the part that got me involved was basically the outrage of knowing that our government may understand secrets about this universe that are absolutely fundamental to our entire existence, but hasn't told us. And it's like, if we pretend to live in a democracy, something as fundamental as the nature of things shouldn't be kept from anybody. Now, I understand that there's might be hardware things that we're engineering that we don't want the Russians to know about, or, you know, all that sort of global security stuff. Yeah. But I mean, like, right now, people roll your eyes when you start talking about poltergeist effects, and they start like, and that's how, but like Green Street, like, sort of uses the Skinwalker brush to tar everything. And it's like, oh,
that's
well,
his MO.
yeah. And it's like someone, you know, experienced poltergeist effects. And because of that, everything they've said and everyone they've talked to is forever tainted by that. And I know people who've had those experiences, and they're telling me the truth when they say that. And so it's like, there's something going on that is deep and we need to reckon with. And until, you know, our government does, I feel like they've all done us a huge disservice. But
yeah, and I'll say this again on the debunkers. You have to ask yourself, so let's say that that you believe in the Loch Ness monster, and I think the Loch Ness monster is a bunch of bunk. I think there's something to it. There's something going on there. But let's say that you're like, Matt, Loch Ness monster is real, and you're tweeting about it, and you're doing videos and interviewing people that have seen the Loch Ness monster. But I'm a reporter for, or I run my own debunking website or whatever. If it were me, well, I'm not running a debunking website, but let's just say that I'm a skeptic and I think that it's a load of crap. I would be like, okay, knock yourself out. If you want to believe in the Loch Ness monster, go on ahead. If you want to tweet about it, James, if you want to do a program about Loch Ness monster, man, knock yourself out. I'm going to go have a beer, or go walk my dog, or do something constructive with my life, rather than spend all of this time and energy painting people with a broad brush and like Green Street does in the way that you're speaking about. You have to ask yourself, why would they do that? Why would, the most precious commodity to us as human beings is our time. Yeah. And you can't get it back, right? So why would they spend all of this energy doing that? I postulate are some of these guys on some kind of payroll or something. I mean, absolutely. I have no direct data about that. It's purely, it's just a guess.
But the way that they work it sure seems like they have a motive beyond just not believing, that they keep attacking over and over and over again. Like it's
all I gotta say is if the New York Post wants to pay me 6 figures a year to tweet and make UFO videos, maybe I'll sign up there. I mean, they must really pay a lot of money.
Well, and Green Street has a history of working for the State Department, having done some stuff, influence videos and stuff. So, I mean, it's not even out of the question of his past skill sets.
No, I don't. Again, I don't have any direct knowledge of it. It just may be his thing. I don't know, but the issue with the professional debunkers and the debunking industry is when you're like a Green Street or any of them that kind of paint people with a broad brush and say, ooh, you're talking about ghosts or Bigfoot or the Loch Ness monster, so all these people are nutty for believing in all of that. What does it do? So let's just say your wife had been reading all this stuff. If I were her and I saw like all the garbage that Green Street and West and some of these folks put out, I'd be like, man, I don't want to tell anybody about this. They're all going to laugh at me.
Yeah.
It's, then you start second guessing yourself. Well, did I really see that? Or, maybe I saw a seagull. It has a net negative effect on people wanting to get at the truth and come forward. Look, after the orb, first time I saw the orb show up above my house, I had a dog gate get knocked over in the middle of the night, banging on the walls, stuff I've never would associate with a UAP, a UFO. Back in the day, I never knew that they were related. The thinking now is that they do co-locate. No one really knows why, but I've experienced this stuff for myself, and I'm a pretty normal guy. I'm not anyone special. I'm wondering what all this stuff is myself, but I've seen it myself. Other people that have been here to witness it as well. So you can have the Stephen Greenstreets of the world trying to paint it with a broad negative brush. But at the end of the day, I know what I saw. It's funny. Mick West at one point commented about when I first sort of went public with seeing these orbs above my house. He made some statement that that I was preloaded with wanting to believe that stuff. I mean, come on, dude. You're not
well,
that
and just
stupid.
the certitude with which he dismisses things and assumes that like a little bit of critical thinking would dispel this is, I mean, he's not as offensive to me as someone like a Greenstreet, but it's like,
for sure.
It can be insulting even indirectly, because it's like, no, I'm a critical thinker. I understand like logic and how these things cause and effect, and I'm telling you that this is outside the norm. I mean, I think that we spend a lot of time dismissing folks because we're not the ones who saw it, and that's a mistake, obviously.
Yeah, when you come at it like Mick often does, it's sort of like coming at someone with like a backhanded compliment. So when whatever video comes out, and he'll often say, oh well, I solved this through simple trigonometry, or solving it was really quite simple. It's a knockdown. It's a cut against people that see this stuff and they know it's real. But when you have people that have that kind of social media or media footprint like Mick West does, it's not constructive to the conversation, and it's a discouraging element. I would hate to be a kid that watches any of Mick West's debunking, because if I watched it enough, I'd be too afraid to ask questions. I'd worry about, what my classmates would think, or I wouldn't even want to bring it up because of fear of social ridicule. It's kind of in my view, sort of a kind of sneaky way of doing it. And again, there is a difference between skeptics, and everyone should be a skeptic, and the professional debunkers. They're two totally different things with two totally different MOs.